Civic TV, the one you take to bed with you.
So we're spending at a huge rate, which if it wasn't increasing faster than inflation, it's increasing as a percentage of the economy, then okay, you can probably afford it. But as it continues to grow, it squeezes out everything else. So right now what you see is it's squeezing higher education. And so the access that used to be available to the middle class or whatever is just rapidly going away. That's a trade-off society is making because of very, very high medical costs and a lack of willingness to say, you know, is spending $1 million on that last 3 months of life for that patient, would it be better not to lay off those 10 teachers and to make that trade-off in medical costs? But that's called the death panel, and you're not supposed to have that discussion. We're making that trade-off because of huge medical costs that are not examined to see which ones actually have no benefit whatsoever. And because of pension generosity, we will be laying off over 100,000 teachers, which, you know, I'm very much against that. And the whole AFT will agree with me on that.
Over the past 20 years, the portion of the provincial budget dedicated to healthcare has gone from 30% to somewhere close to 40% and rising. Currently, it costs BC $19.5 billion annually. At some point, the cost of healthcare will undermine the provincial government's ability to provide education, social services, transportation, and everything else in its scope of responsibilities.
It's another milestone for the baby boom generation. The first of the estimated 79 million Americans born between 1946 and 1964 will turn 65 years old this year at a rate of 10,000 a day, according to the Pew Research Center.
This morning, in a brand new declaration, 11,000 scientists from 153 countries. The Alliance of World Scientists says it has a moral obligation to warn humanity. It says greenhouse gas emissions are still rising and that recent efforts to reduce them are not enough. The Alliance says it had to speak out. Why? Because climate change is threatening ecosystems and, get this, the fate of humanity. Scary words there. The fate of humanity.
The baby boomers were America's dumbest generation ever.
Generation of sociopaths. How the baby boomers betrayed America. I am a baby boomer. What have I done wrong?
This is all wrong. People are suffering. People are dying. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you! If you really understood the situation and still kept on failing to act, then you would be evil. You are failing us. But the young people are starting to understand your betrayal. The eyes of all future generations are upon you. And if you choose to fail us, I say we will never forgive you. We will not let you get away with this. Right here, right now, is where we draw the line. And change is coming whether you like it or not. We will never forgive you.
Oh, there are no baby boomers in heaven, 'cause heaven don't like war. Every year and every election, the baby boomers vote for more. So, baby boomers go to hell, baby boomers go to hell, baby boomers go to hell and stay there forever. Baby boomers go to hell, baby boomers go to hell, baby boomers go to hell and burn there forever.
So we're spending at a huge rate, which if it wasn't increasing faster than inflation, it's increasing as a percentage of the economy, then okay, you can probably afford it. But as it continues to grow, it squeezes out everything else.
So how do you fix all that debt? Great question, Chaz. Welcome to the future, where America has racked up an extra $46 billion in debt since I filmed that piece. And the fair whack of that is because of Social Security, America's public pension system. Some might say that Social Security's done too good a job. While old people were receiving a 55% boost in their net worth over the last 30-odd years, young people were receiving a 17% cut in their wealth. And those young people might be facing more cuts in the future. You see, as the boomers age, Social Security spending is on the rise, and there are fewer youngsters to pay for it. In 1960, there were 5 workers for every Social Security recipient, but by 2035, there will only be 2 workers for every beneficiary, which means Social Security is projected to exhaust its surpluses in 15 years. Note, that does not mean it will stop paying benefits, but those payouts will be greater than they budgeted for. The important thing is it will result in more debt. So how do we fix it?
President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, they're baby boomers. We vote. And we're not going to vote to cut the entitlements which we feel, not me, but which my generation feels entitled to. We are setting up a monumental problem down the road.
That's right. It will start manifesting no later than 2034 when the Social Security Trust Fund is exhausted. CBO is projecting 2029.
So how do we fix it?
Take another step forward to addressing the baby boomer problem that we know is all coming in about 10, 11 years.
Well, it's the size of the baby boomer cohort. You know, they're a big number.
One of the problems that we have is we have a baby boomer population that's going to be retired.
How do we fix it?
Are here to help. Con Edison is here to help. Here to help.
Our teams are here.
We are here.
We're here.
We're here.
So you can trust us.
I am a baby boomer.
The baby boomers.
We have a baby boomer.
Baby boomer.
The baby boomers.
Baby boomer problem.
American baby boomers.
Did somebody say boom? Did somebody say boom?
I'm a nurse practitioner. I am licensed and certified. I'm not going to name names of people or hospitals for the safety of those involved. In New York City right now, in some of the hospitals, this is what is going on. People are sick, but they don't have to stay sick. They are killing them. They are not helping them. She used the word murder, coming from a nurse who went to New York City expecting to help. Patients are left to rot and die. What is happening is that they're putting people on nasal cannula. If they require more than 6 liters of nasal cannula, they get intubated, they go on the vent, or they get trached if there's not enough vents. The patients don't know any better. They don't have family with them. There is no one there with them to advocate for them. So they are scared and they give consent. The ventilators have high PEEP, high pressure, which then causes barotrauma. It causes trauma to the lungs. She says this is a nightmare. It's out of a horror movie, and I don't want to be a part of this.
Hospitals consider universal do not resuscitate orders for coronavirus patients. Do not resuscitate orders have caused panic in the UK. Coronavirus patients admitted to Queen's nursing home with body bags. They were taking people sick with coronavirus and putting them in a home filled with the most vulnerable people imaginable. New York Times. Doctors need room to make the wrenching decisions they face. New York is granting healthcare providers civil and criminal immunity during the coronavirus emergency. Unprecedented number of do not resuscitate orders for learning disabilities patients. Learning Disability and Mental Health Service Provider says it is still receiving unlawful do not resuscitate orders. From the Ottawa Citizen, Medical Assistance in Dying program resumes after pause for COVID-19. Jean Trucon, who fought to expand medically assisted death, receives the procedure. A war on the elderly is coming. In Italy, coronavirus has led to hospitals ruling that anyone over the age of 60 was not going to be treated. Essentially a death sentence for pensioners, most of whom are boomers.
Did somebody say boom?
Imagine, if you will, that you have a problem with the baby boomers becoming a drain upon the system. Imagine, if you will, that you have an overpopulation problem in general. Could you imagine? Could you take your mind to a place and imagine how useful a constantly reoccurring pandemic would be? Let's say a couple of times a year you have a pandemic that comes along and decreases the surplus boomer population. Furthermore, as is always the case in high-level politics, you could slip through all kinds of other agendas that you've been itching to put through, such as all kinds of totalitarian new laws and controls over the population, including heavy censorship online. Because we can't allow misinformation to risk people's lives. Now, can we? Imagine, if you will, that you believe that the environment is in danger. And the best way to get that problem under control is to get the population down, which can be done through, for instance, targeting certain populations for culling. Imagine, if you will, biological warfare as an instrument of state for managing problems within their own population. But such a thing couldn't happen, right?
If you're on the board of a care home company, a pandemic is one of the things that you think about as a potential damage to your business because of the number of older people it's going to take out of the system. Curiously, ripping off the sticking plaster, in that hospital I'm thinking about that has 92 delayed discharges, a pandemic would be quite useful because then your hospital would work because these people would be taken out of the system.
Now imagine a world where mass outbreaks of deadly diseases are commonplace. Well, it sounds scary, but that might not be too far off. The World Health Organization has warned in a BBC interview that we're entering a new phase where such a reality is, quote, a new normal, and it's calling for the world to get ready.
Large-scale outbreaks of diseases like Ebola could be the new normal, according to the World Health Organization. Dr. Michael Ryan, a WHO senior advisor, told the BBC the organization is dealing with more emergencies at once than it ever has, and he doesn't expect that to get any better. Ryan said many factors are to blame for the normalization of epidemics, including climate change, emerging diseases, and highly mobile populations.
Right now, the future can seem even more uncertain than normal. If you've lost your job, if you're worried about an elderly parent, you probably want to know what to expect. Our healthcare systems across the country are coping for the time being, but we're at a fork in the road between the best and the worst possible outcomes. The best possible outcome is no easy path for any of us. The initial peak, the top of the curve, may be in late spring with the end of the first wave in the summer. As Dr. Tam explained, there will likely be smaller outbreaks for a number of months after that. This will be the new normal until a vaccine is developed.
Well, we will get back to normal, but we're going to have a pretty long period of semi-normal. And it's
what does
fair to say
semi-normal mean? What's semi-normal?
That people will still be afraid.
Our leaders would never be so calculating and evil. Right? Erich Fromm, who observed the rise of fascism firsthand in Germany, noted, "When fascism came into power, most people were unprepared, both theoretically and practically. They were unable to believe that man could exhibit such propensities for evil, such lust for power, or such a yearning for the submission of the population." From my essay, Synanon, The Brainwashing Game and Modern Transgender Activism. At this point in history, there should be no question. It should not even be controversial that political leaders and their supporters can become power-mad and capable of the most insidious, carefully planned and executed, far-reaching evils imaginable. To ignore this capacity is irresponsible, particularly for those who are familiar with history.
You know, is spending $1 million on that last 3 months of life for that patient, would it be better not to lay off those 10 teachers and to make that trade-off in medical costs? But that's called the death panel, and you're not supposed to have that discussion.
In New York City right now, in some of the hospitals, this is what is going on. People are sick, but they don't have to stay sick. They are killing them. They are not helping them. She used the word murder, coming from a nurse who went to New York City expecting to help.
And then the final solution, which is a year to 2 years off, is the vaccine. So we've got to go full speed ahead on all three fronts.
Just to head off the conspiracy theorists, maybe we shouldn't call the vaccine the final solution. Maybe just the best solution. Okay.
Yeah, the return to normal solution.
If you're on the board of a care home company, a pandemic is one of the things that you think about as a potential damage to your business because of the number of older people it's going to take out the system. Curiously, ripping off the sticking plaster, in that hospital I'm thinking about that has 92 delayed discharges, a pandemic would be quite useful because then your hospital would work because these people would be taken out of the system.
Well, Bill, since you tried to warn us about this pandemic and we didn't listen, what's the next thing you're warning us about that's going to happen 5 years from now that we're not listening to at the present?
Well, the idea of a bioterrorist attack is kind of the nightmare scenario because they're a pathogen with a high death rate would be picked. Now, the good news is, I'm not trying to depress you, it's tough enough right now. Most of the work we're going to do to be ready for pandemic 2, I call this pandemic 1.
Could you imagine? Could you take your mind to a place and imagine how useful a constantly reoccurring pandemic would be? Let's say a couple of times a year you have a pandemic that comes along and decreases the surplus boomer population.
The contagion, a lot of people are going to die. A lot of people. You could be talking about millions of lives. And there'll be a lot of death, unfortunately. Plenty of those people dying too. Between 1.5 million and 2.2 million U.S. deaths.
Imagine, if you will, biological warfare as an instrument of state for managing problems within their own population. But such a thing couldn't happen, right?
There is a fifth dimension, beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. This is the dimension of imagination.
Imagine there's no boomers, no one around to lie, no brain dead human tumors. When will they fucking die? Imagine all the millennials living the American dream. Imagine there's no hippies spitting on our vets, rebelling in their 60s and smelling like their pets.
You are living in a carefully constructed reality. Everything you think you know is wrong.
Civic TV, the one you take to bed with you.